Hello, ladies and germs. Thank you for joining me for another edition of this old Silvertone. I've got a 1958, a Silvertone Espanada. It's H64 is what it says on the inside here. We'll have a look. It's all messed up. It's gonna need some work. Let's have a look. Boy, these guitars are worth a lot of money. I was just looking on Reverb, and one of them selling for 4,000 smackers. See the USA, made in USA S58E. I think the serial number is 3962 and the model number is H64. And look at these neat F holes. I don't know if you noticed, but they're not joined all the way. They got a little dividers. Kind of cool. I checked the neck relief. It's pretty good at 9 thousandths of an inch. I checked the string action at the 12th fret, and it's 4/64ths on these two outer strings. But when you get towards the inner strings, it's only 2/64ths, because the notches in the saddle have gone too deep here in the middle, and there's no radius to these strings. They're dead flat. But the fretboard itself does have a radius, so I think we'll fill in these slots and recut them. We'll use super glue and rosewood dust, and then there's a giant crack running almost the entire length of the fretboard. Let's have a look at that. Probably be better to take the strings off to have a look at that, but it goes down, and there you go. Wow. Alright, that's going to be a little bit of work. Again, super glue and ebony dust probably be the best way. I have a bridge pickup here with 8.8 kilo ohms and a neck pickup with 8 kilo ohms. And the jack seems messed up. When I wiggle the cable, it jumps around quite a bit. So I think maybe tightening it up will do the trick, but let's check another thing here. Okay, I'm checking continuity with the strings and the ground at the jack, and there's nothing. So we're probably gonna need to gut this thing and find out what's going on with the electronics, because it's probably kind of noisy. Let's listen to it. Don't see that very often around here. Two 1940s Gibson LG models, LG3 and LG2, with their necks off. It's all messed up. Oh, it's messed up. I've got a few rocking frets. I have a giant hump here at the neck to body joint. Let's see if we can tap those down or reseat some of them before we start fixing the fingerboard. We'll do the best we can with it, but these frets are about 35 thousandths of an inch in height, so it's not like we really need to do a refret for the sake of the frets being worn down too far, but this hump is a problem. Could cause a little buzzing, but we'll fix the saddle, the bridge, the radius, reseat what we can, and see how it goes. So as it turns out, there's no ground wire. There never was. So it might not be too hard to get a wire from here to here, but I have to drill a hole and feed it through and maybe get this, see this is already loose, get this to pull through the F hole and make the connection through the F hole and then pull it all back. Wow, that's soft stuff. That's not rosewood. Wow, that's like pine. Holy cow. Okay. Well, it's no wonder those string slots got so deep over time, because pine is not a good hardwood. It's not a hardwood at all. It's damn softwood. So we have loose inlays, loose frets, almost all of them. We're gonna have to use a lot of super glue to glue all this stuff down. I'm talking the entire fretboard. Way over here. These are loose, right in the middle. I'll just wax off the whole board, one by one, glue all these frets in. I waxed off the fretboard and I wick number 10 thin CA glue on either side of the fret crown, hold it down with my fretting hammer, and give it a spritz of accelerator. I usually want to hold the fret down in the center, which I'm not quite there. I'm on the edge of the brass, but I'll do that to all 21 frets. I'll also remove the truss rod nut and see how it's looking. I'll get a nice flat surface going on that area there with some mineral spirits and my diamond file. Get it nice and flat. Put a little bit of brown lithium grease on there and reinstall it onto the threaded rod. That way when we're ready to tighten that truss rod, it's smooth like butter. He asked me to replace his nut with a new bone nut that's not as crispy crittery as that. I'll prepare the nut shelf with my nut file, nut seating file. I always use an ignition file up against the fretboard end. Like you can see there, it's dark all the way through, and it's a poplar fretboard. There was a giant hump at the neck to body joint, so I'll just make a few swipes up to the 12th fret, try to create a little fall away and flatten everything back out. But as far as the rest of the fretboard goes, I only had to spot level about 3 or 4 of them. Now, as the super glue cures, I'll drill a new hole for the ground wire, and it's a pretty decent tail block they put in this guitar. It's about 1 inch thick. This is 18 gauge unshielded wire. Works perfect for a ground wire. Cut it to length approximately, and I will do the old Gibson trick of, instead of pulling all of the electronics out through the pickup hole, I will just run the ground wire to the shielded ground wire. It's got one of the pickups have that braided shielded ground that covers the entire length of the lead. Oh, I want to flatten out this ground wire down here at this end so the tailpiece can smash it up against the body. Want to make sure that's flattened out good. That was my fret tang holder tool. It's like a pair of pliers. It has a flat surface on it for crimping stuff, whatever. Alright, so you wrap the ground wire around the braided ground pickup and solder away. Solder away. I use a paper towel and a piece of wood to make sure that the solder doesn't end up on the guitar. I had to degrease that braid too. It was a little greasy and waxy. continuity recheck. It's a beautiful sound. There we go. Now the strings will be part of the circuit, creating a much more pleasant sound. One more thing we have here is kind of this crack. It kind of goes from about here to here. We'll zoom in. See if we can get a little glue in there. Yeah. Get some of these spool clamps on here. Set it over here for now for a few hours, let this cure, let this harden some more, and we'll make a new nut for it. And we'll see how we did with these this fret level. If everything's good, no buzz, we'll crown them and polish them. Now I'll get scraping and sanding off these super glue marks. As I started doing this, I began to realize that this is not ebony wood. All that dark is going away as the more I scrape and sand, the more reddish brown it starts looking. So I reached out to Trevor Healy in East Hampton, Mass, and he verified for me that this is a quarter sawn poplar fretboard. He's worked on and refretted many a Silvertone from the 50s. And I'd like to know, though, how did they stain this? I mean, it seems like they soaked it or something, because it penetrated very deep, maybe even all the way through. Anyways, to get the dark color back in there, I mixed Danish oil with some dark walnut stain, which has some black in it. But it's more of a reddish dark brown black. It's got a rich tone to it, and it leaves a little bit of the reddish poking through. It's not jet black anyways. If we did want to go for a jet black fretboard, I'd maybe put in some India ink into that little mixture there. And Trevor also mentioned to me that he likes to put a coat of shellac on the fretboard afterwards, maybe to seal it up, which I might still do. I knew that it was really dried out and I wanted to re-moisturize it, so the Danish oil is great for that. It's, like boiled linseed oil or any other type of fretboard oil. It hydrates, and it allowed me some vessel for the dark color. You have one scratchy pot. It's the bridge volume pot, and I'm going to come in here and pop that knob off. Boom. And then I put a little deoxit in the pipette, and I'm going to just put a little down around the shaft. work it on in there. Took a minute, but it works. So after filling all these in, I basically just notched it down just slightly with my nut files, and you can see that the strings have the proper radius to them already. I just had to fine-tune one or two of them slightly, but it seems like a really reasonable radius for that fretboard, a good match, I should say. And just need to set the intonation, actually change the strings, set the intonation, make that new nut, and we'll be right back. And since I ran the fret leveling file over this area here, I'll need to start re-crowning these fret tops. I've protected the guitar top with a little piece of vinyl and a fret shield from Music Nomad. I'm using the 25-inch scale length fret shield, but this guitar has actually more like a 25.1 scale. I had to kind of maneuver the fret shield back and forth when I was doing the crowning the tops on the 1st through 12th fret. I would shift it back and forth to make it protect the fretboard. Don't want to scratch off all that oil I just put on there. I'll do 220 grit all the way up through 2000 grit with a gray Scotch Brite in between, just before the 1200 grit, and a maroon Scotch Brite pad before the 400 grit. I'll pick out a bone blank with the appropriate color and correct size. I'll cut it to length on the bandsaw. Get it to the right thickness on the belt sander. And then we'll put a bevel and round the corners over on the drill press disc sander. Once I get it back to the guitar, I'll hone in the exact thickness with some 120 grit sandpaper on an MDF block. Then I'll mark my outside string centers and cut them with a razor saw. Based on those two outside strings, I can mark down where the rest of the strings go with my string spacing rule. We'll cut those with the razor saw and open up their widths with my nut files. I use the Music Nomad diamond files for that. Once I get it on the guitar, I'll get it down a little bit closer with Stumac files. And there's a roughed in nut blank. After putting the strings on, I'll mark the exact length of the nut and trim it on my precision disc sander. I like to use these 9 micro mesh polishing or sanding pads to polish the bone to a beautiful tooth-like appearance. Most of the time I do this. Once in a while I leave it rough, but depends on what the guitar looks like. This guitar's in pretty good shape. And there it is. It's a pretty nut. We decided to go with these plain G string round wound strings instead of those jazz flats. The This whole time I was thinking, with a softwood bridge and fretboard, it might sound weird. You know, maybe that's part of the sound, though. It's a pretty nice save. Appreciate you guys hanging around.